You know what's funny about life? Sometimes one stupid night can unravel everything you thought you had under control. 7 months ago, I was living what I thought was the perfect double life. Married to Gabriel for 32 years, but getting the excitement I craved from Kevin, this gorgeous 35-year-old who made me feel alive again. I'm Chelsea, 57, and yeah, I know what you're thinking. But trust me, when you've been with the same man since you were 22, you start craving something different, something that makes your heart race again. The whole thing started innocently enough at work. Kevin was this new guy, confident, charming, and he actually paid attention to me. Not like Gabriel, who barely looked up from his phone during dinner anymore. Kevin would compliment my outfits, ask about my day, make me laugh. It felt so good to be noticed, to feel desired again. Gabriel had gotten so comfortable, so predictable. We were like roommates, more than lovers. So when Kevin started flirting, when he suggested we grab drinks after work, I didn't see the harm. One drink turned into dinner, dinner turned into long conversations, and before I knew it, I was head over heels in this intoxicating affair. For months, I managed to keep both worlds separate. Gabriel never suspected anything. He was too wrapped up in his own routine to notice I was coming home later, dressing better, actually caring about how I looked again. My best friend Ava knew, of course. She'd been through her own affair a few years back and understood how suffocating marriage could become. She helped me cover, gave me alibis, even encouraged me when I had moments of doubt. You deserve to be happy, she'd tell me. You've given Gabriel the best years of your life. What's wrong with taking something for yourself? The night everything went sideways. We'd all gone out after a concert. Me, Gabriel, Ava and her husband Mackenzie, plus Gabriel's brother-in-law Cooper and his wife Bentley. Gabriel was being his usual boring self, designated driver as always because he doesn't drink. I was feeling restless, trapped sitting there listening to the same old conversations about work and bills and mundane married life crap. Then I saw Kevin across the bar, and my heart just started pounding. He looked so good, and I hadn't seen him in a few days because we'd been trying to be more careful. When Ava and I went to the restroom, I told her I'd spotted Kevin. She immediately offered to cover for me, said she'd tell everyone I had stomach issues if they asked. God, I loved her for understanding. I made my way through the crowd to Kevin, and the moment I reached him, he pulled me close. His hand went to my hip, mine to his shoulders, and for those few minutes, I forgot where I was. I forgot about Gabriel sitting 20 feet away. Kevin was telling me how much he'd missed me, how beautiful I looked, and I was just melting in him. Then suddenly Gabriel appeared out of nowhere. I saw him before Kevin did, and I immediately tried to disengage, grabbing Gabriel's arm to pull him away. But Gabriel wasn't having it. He demanded to know who Kevin was, and Kevin, being Kevin, got defensive and told him it was none of his business. I was panicking, trying to think of some explanation, when Kevin just lost it and punched Gabriel in the head. Everything happened so fast after that. Gabriel stumbled backward, Kevin tackled him into the wall, and Gabriel went down hard. Cooper jumped in and beat the hell out of Kevin, while I stood there frozen, watching my two worlds collide in the worst possible way. Gabriel was unconscious, Kevin was bleeding, and I knew I had to think fast. When the police came, I told them Kevin was just a coworker who'd gotten handsy, and everyone overreacted. It wasn't entirely a lie. Kevin did work with me, and things had gotten out of hand. I figured if I could just control the narrative, maybe I could salvage this mess. But watching Gabriel get loaded into that ambulance, seeing him so hurt and confused, I felt this sick twist in my stomach. Not guilt exactly, but fear. Fear that my perfect setup was crumbling. I'd worked so hard to keep these two parts of my life separate, and now they'd crashed together in the most violent way possible. As I followed the ambulance to the hospital, I wasn't thinking about how badly Gabriel was hurt, or how wrong I'd been. I was thinking about damage control, about how to spin this so my secret stayed safe. What I didn't know was that Cooper had heard everything. While I was focused on Gabriel lying there unconscious, Kevin was running his mouth, bragging to anyone who'd listen about how he'd been sleeping with me for months. Cooper caught every word, but he was smart enough to keep quiet about it in the moment. 2 days later, He showed up at our house while I was at work and told Gabriel everything. I had no idea Gabriel knew anything. He was acting completely normal when I got home from the hospital, concerned, asking how I was feeling, if I needed anything. I thought I'd dodged a bullet. Sure, the whole situation was messy, but my story held up with the police, and Gabriel seemed to buy it. I told him Kevin was just some creep from work who'd had too much to drink and gotten inappropriate. Gabriel nodded along, even seemed sympathetic about how traumatic it must have been for me. Meanwhile, Gabriel was playing the long game in a way I never would have expected from him. He's always been more of a direct confrontation type, but apparently, Cooper had done his research and advised Gabriel to gather evidence before making any moves. So while I thought everything was back to normal, Gabriel was methodically building his case against me. The first thing he did was get access to my phone. I'm not tech-savvy at all, and I'd gotten careless because Gabriel had never shown any interest in checking up on me before. But one day when I was in the shower, he went through everything. All the texts, all the photos Kevin and I had exchanged, even some videos that, well, let's just say they were very explicit. I had no idea he'd seen any of it. Gabriel started copying everything. Screenshots of conversations, downloading photos and videos, even saving texts between me and Ava, where she was helping me plan meetups with Kevin. He found messages where Ava was encouraging me to leave Gabriel, telling me I deserved better, even confessing about her own affair with their neighbor. Gabriel was building a comprehensive file of evidence, and I was completely oblivious. For the next few months, I was living in this weird bubble where I thought I'd gotten away with everything. Kevin and I had agreed to lay low for a while after the bar incident, but we kept texting constantly. He was being sweet, telling me how sorry he was that things got violent, how he just couldn't stand seeing another man question his claim on me. Looking back, that should have been a red flag, but I was so caught up in the drama and intensity of it all. Gabriel, meanwhile, was the perfect husband. He was attentive, asking about my day, bringing me coffee in the morning, even initiating intimacy more often than he had in years. I thought maybe the shock of almost losing me had woken him up, made him realize he needed to put more effort into our marriage. What I didn't know was that he was using those intimate moments to look for evidence of my affair, checking for marks, seeing if I'd react differently, testing whether I'd slip up and say something incriminating. The truth is, being intimate with Gabriel during this time felt awful. Not because I felt guilty, but because it was so different from what I had with Kevin. Gabriel was methodical, almost clinical about it, like he was going through the motions. Kevin made me feel wild and desired and alive. With Gabriel, I felt like I was just fulfilling an obligation, but I played along because I thought it meant our marriage was getting back on track. After about 3 weeks, Kevin and I started meeting up again. We'd be more careful this time, we promised each other. No more public displays, no more risks, but the sneaking around just made it more exciting. We'd meet at his apartment during my lunch breaks, or I'd tell Gabriel I was working late and we'd grab dinner at restaurants across town. Ava continued to provide alibis and cover stories, and I thought we were being so clever. What I didn't realize was that Gabriel was tracking everything. He knew when I was lying about working late because he'd drive by my office and see my car wasn't there. He knew about the lunch meetings because he'd started paying attention to how long I was gone and what excuse I gave. He even figured out where Kevin lived and would sometimes follow me there, taking photos of my car in Kevin's parking lot. The whole time, Gabriel was also making practical preparations. He reached out to his sister Bentley, who owns rental properties, and quietly arranged to rent a house. He consulted with a divorce attorney and had papers drawn up. He was even calculating our assets and figuring out how to protect his retirement accounts. All of this was happening while I thought he was just being a more attentive husband. About 4 months after the bar incident, I started noticing small changes in Gabriel's behavior. He'd ask more specific questions about my day, wanting details about meetings or projects that I'd mentioned. He'd make comments about trust and honesty in marriage that felt pointed, but when I'd ask what he meant, he'd just say he was thinking about how lucky we were to have such a solid relationship. It made me nervous, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Then Kevin started getting more demanding. He wanted me to leave Gabriel, wanted us to be together openly. He'd get angry when I'd say I wasn't ready, accusing me of stringing him along or being ashamed of him. The fights were intense but also kind of thrilling. No one had ever wanted me that desperately before. But I wasn't ready to blow up my life. I liked having the security of my marriage and the excitement of the affair. Why did I have to choose? Around month 5, Ava started getting nervous too. Her husband Mackenzie had been asking questions about why she was out so much, why she was always covering for me. She was worried he was getting suspicious, and she started pressuring me to either end things with Kevin or come clean to Gabriel. But I wasn't ready for either option. I was addicted to the double life, to having my cake and eating it too. That's when Gabriel started showing me more affection, being more present in our conversations, even suggesting we take a trip together to reconnect. I thought it was sweet, that maybe we really were finding our way back to each other. What I didn't know was that he was documenting everything, how I'd respond to his gestures, whether I seemed genuine or distracted, if I'd check my phone constantly when we were together. The beginning of the end came about 6 months after the bar fight. I'd been having lunch with Kevin, and when I got back to the office, I realized I'd left my phone in his car. I panicked, knowing Gabriel would be suspicious if I came home without it. I called Kevin from my work phone, begging him to meet me somewhere so I could get it back. He was in meetings all afternoon, so I had to go home and pretend my battery had died. Gabriel seemed to accept the explanation, even offered to let me use his charger. But I could tell something was different. He was watching me more carefully, asking if everything was okay, if I was feeling stressed about anything. I brushed it off, said work had been crazy, but I could feel him studying my reactions. That night, after Gabriel fell asleep, I snuck out to my car to call Kevin and make sure we were on the same page about the phone story. What I didn't know was that Gabriel was awake, listening to me leave and return. He was keeping track of these late-night phone calls, these moments when I thought I was being sneaky. The next morning, Gabriel was unusually quiet. He made coffee and breakfast like always, but he seemed distant, almost cold. When I asked if something was wrong, he said he was just tired, maybe coming down with something. I bought it completely, even offered to pick up medicine for him on my way home from work. Looking back, that was probably when Gabriel finalized his plans. He'd gathered months of evidence, arranged his living situation, prepared the divorce papers, and was just waiting for the right moment to execute everything. But I was still living in my fantasy world, thinking I'd successfully managed both relationships without anyone getting hurt. The reality check came about a month later. I'd started noticing that Gabriel was being more affectionate again, but it felt different this time. Less genuine, more like he was performing. He'd kiss me goodbye in the morning and tell me he loved me, but his eyes seemed empty. He'd ask about my day with what seemed like genuine interest, but I started getting the feeling he already knew the answers to his questions. Then, Kevin started getting more aggressive about wanting me to leave Gabriel. He'd send me photos of apartments we could rent together, talk about how much better our life would be once we didn't have to sneak around. The pressure was getting to me, and I started snapping at both him and Gabriel. I was irritable all the time, feeling pulled in too many directions. That's when I finally started to suspect that Gabriel might know something. Not because he accused me or confronted me, but because he started being almost too understanding. When I'd come home late, he'd just smile and ask if I'd had a good time. When I'd be vague about where I'd been, he'd nod and change the subject. It was like he was giving me rope to hang myself with. I tried talking to Ava about my suspicions, but she was dealing with her own problems. Mackenzie had started asking direct questions about her whereabouts, and she was worried he was going to find out about her affair with the neighbor. She couldn't help me figure out whether Gabriel was on to us, because she was too busy trying to manage her own situation. The final straw came when I decided I needed to end things with Kevin. Not because I felt guilty, but because I was getting tired of all the pressure and drama. I wanted to go back to my comfortable life with Gabriel. Maybe work on our marriage for real this time. Kevin didn't take it well. He accused me of using him, said I was a coward for not being willing to fight for what we had. Our breakup fight was explosive. Kevin said things that hurt, called me names, threatened to tell Gabriel everything himself if I was going to just walk away. I told him he was being ridiculous, that what we had was never meant to be permanent. That just made him angrier, and he started sending me angry texts, demanding to see me one more time to talk things through. I agreed to meet him, thinking I could calm him down and end things peacefully. But when I got to his apartment, Kevin was drunk and belligerent. He kept asking why Gabriel was worth more than him, what made a boring old man better than someone who actually appreciated me. I tried to explain that it wasn't about worth, it was about stability and history and the life I'd built. Kevin didn't want to hear it. He grabbed me, tried to kiss me, said he knew I didn't really want to end things. When I pushed him away, he got angry and started yelling about how I'd led him on, how I'd made him fall in love with me just to throw him away. It was ugly and scary, and I realized I'd made a huge mistake getting involved with someone so volatile. I left his apartment that night knowing I was done with the affair for good. But I also knew Kevin wasn't going to just disappear quietly. He kept texting me, calling me, showing up at places where he knew I'd be. I was getting scared, but I couldn't tell Gabriel about it without revealing everything. What I didn't know was that Gabriel had been monitoring my phone records and could see all of Kevin's calls and texts. He knew exactly how often Kevin was contacting me, and he was documenting it all as evidence of the ongoing affair. Even as I was trying to end things, Gabriel was watching me fail to cut Kevin off completely. Then one morning, I woke up, and Gabriel was gone. Not just gone for work, his clothes were missing from the closet. His toiletries were gone from the bathroom. Even his coffee mug wasn't in the kitchen sink. There was an envelope on the kitchen counter with my name on it, and inside were divorce papers along with copies of every text, every photo, every piece of evidence Gabriel had been collecting for months. The shock was overwhelming. I'd thought I was so careful, so clever, but Gabriel had known everything for months. He'd been playing me the entire time, gathering evidence while I thought I was getting away with murder. The photos were particularly humiliating. Pictures of my car at Kevin's apartment, screenshots of texts where I was planning meetups, even copies of the explicit videos Kevin and I had exchanged. But what really got to me was the letter Gabriel had included. He laid out everything he knew, every lie I'd told, every time I'd manipulated him or made him feel crazy for having suspicions. He wrote about how he'd felt watching me come home and pretend to be a loving wife while carrying on with another man. He said he'd stayed quiet, not because he was weak, but because he wanted to make sure he had everything he needed to protect himself in the divorce. The letter also revealed that Gabriel had already contacted Kevin's wife. Yes, Kevin was married, something I'd known but chosen to ignore because it was convenient for me. Gabriel had sent her copies of all the evidence, and she'd already filed for divorce too. He'd also contacted Ava's husband Mackenzie and told him about both affairs, mine and Ava's affair with their neighbor. I tried calling Gabriel, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I drove to his office, but his coworker said he'd taken extended leave. I even went to Cooper and Bentley's house, but they wouldn't tell me where Gabriel was staying. Cooper looked at me with such disgust and said I'd done enough damage already. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Kevin's wife showed up at my workplace screaming at me in front of all my colleagues about how I'd destroyed her family. She'd brought printouts of our text conversations and was reading them out loud in the lobby. I was mortified, but also angry. Why was I getting blamed when Kevin was the one who'd lied to both of us? Then Ava called me, crying and furious. Mackenzie had confronted her with the evidence Gabriel provided, and now he was filing for divorce too. But worse than that, their daughter had found out about Ava's affair with her high school math teacher. The girl was devastated, humiliated at school, and refusing to speak to her mother. Ava blamed me for everything falling apart, said if I'd just been more careful, none of this would have happened. I tried to defend myself, to point out that Ava had encouraged the affair and helped me cover it up. But she wasn't hearing it. She said I was selfish and reckless. that I dragged her down with me. Our friendship ended with her screaming at me over the phone, calling me names I won't repeat. Work became unbearable. Kevin's wife had made sure everyone knew about our affair, and my colleagues were treating me like a pariah. My boss called me in for a meeting about maintaining professional standards, and I could tell they were looking for reasons to get rid of me. The whole office was buzzing with gossip about my personal life. Meanwhile, Gabriel's divorce attorney was ruthless. They'd filed for divorce on grounds of adultery, and with all the evidence Gabriel had collected, there was no way to deny it. The lawyer was demanding that I pay Gabriel alimony since my affair had caused the breakdown of the marriage. They were also going after me for legal fees and trying to minimize what I'd get from our shared assets. I hired my own lawyer, but there wasn't much they could do. The evidence was overwhelming, and Gabriel had been smart about protecting himself financially. He'd moved money around, secured his retirement accounts, and made sure I couldn't touch anything without a court order. I was looking at losing not just my marriage, but potentially my financial security too. The worst part was telling our kids. Isabella, Mason, and our youngest all had to hear about their mother's affair and the messy divorce that followed. They were disappointed and hurt, and while they didn't cut me off completely, things were strained. They couldn't understand how I could throw away 32 years of marriage for some fling with a younger man. But here's what really gets me. Everyone acts like I'm the only one who did anything wrong. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I lied about it. But Gabriel spent months lying too, pretending everything was fine while he was secretly building a case against me. How is that any better? He manipulated me just as much as I manipulated him, and Kevin turned out to be a complete disaster. After his wife left him and took the kids, he started drinking heavily and blaming me for ruining his life. He'd call me drunk, alternating between begging me to take him back and calling me terrible names. I had to change my number and threatened to get a restraining order. 2 years later, I'm living in a small apartment across town, working at a job that pays half what I used to make because I had to leave my old company. Gabriel got the house, most of our retirement savings, and moved on with his life, like our 32 years of marriage meant nothing to him. The thing that really bothers me is how everyone thinks Gabriel is some kind of hero for the way he handled everything. Sure, he was methodical and smart about protecting himself, but he was also cold and calculating. A loving husband would have confronted me, would have given me a chance to explain or work things out. Instead, he spent months planning my destruction. I heard through mutual friends that Gabriel started dating someone new about a year after our divorce was finalized. Some woman he met through his work, apparently very sweet and down to earth. Everyone talks about how happy he seems, how much better he looks, like he's been reborn or something. It's nauseating. Meanwhile, I'm still dealing with the fallout. My relationship with my kids is slowly improving, but it'll never be the same. Ava and I haven't spoken since that phone call, and I lost most of our mutual friends in the divorce. Kevin eventually moved to another state, but not before causing more drama and making my life hell for months. Look, I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes. The affair was wrong, the lying was wrong, and I hurt people I cared about. But I'm tired of being painted as the villain in this story when everyone else was playing games too. Gabriel could have handled things differently. Ava could have been a better friend. Kevin could have been less of a psychopath. The truth is, I was in an unhappy marriage, and I found someone who made me feel alive again. Maybe I went about it the wrong way, but my feelings were real. Gabriel had checked out of our marriage long before Kevin came along. He just used the affair as an excuse to end things in a way that made him look like the victim. So yeah, I cheated. I got caught. I lost everything. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life apologizing for wanting to be happy. Everyone else can think what they want. I know the real story, and it's a lot more complicated than the simple narrative of the cheating wife and the wronged husband.